Josh Klein joining me from Iceland. Hello, sir. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right, thank you. So let me ask you. Obviously, you spent years examining systems in all different sorts of ways, taking them apart, putting them back together. Give me a couple of good things, or even just one thing where something's fallen out, something you've examined. It's really surprised
Oh my gosh.
you.
NFTs totally caught me by surprise. So NFTs are non-fungible tokens. They're these art pieces that people are buying for extraordinary amounts. My crypto buddies and I have been talking for years that eventually we were going to see smart contracts used in a real world environment that were hugely popular. We did not expect that it would be people buying virtual copies of art. That's not what we anticipated.
And what's your view of it?
My view on it is it's FOMO, it's
Okay.
speculation, it's uncertainty, it's all the things that the critics claim, certainly, but it's also a first instance of a widely popular use of smart contracts, and it's
Mm.
validating a lot of the premises behind cryptocurrencies. And it's happening at the same time that China is pushing out one of their cryptocurrencies, which has massive implications for the way that they use soft power. It's happening at the same time that other governments, the UK, is looking at publishing a cryptocurrency of its own.
Yeah.
So centralized government-backed cryptocurrencies are starting to become a real thing at the same time that consumer-grade cryptocurrencies or smart contracts, other instances of blockchain backed products are starting to become popular. So it spells really big change for the financial services industry.
And so what happens kind of with all the different cryptocurrencies? Do they kind of do it eventually converge down to a few, or do they keep on multiplying out?
Yes.
The
On both
latter.
counts, on both counts,
Okay.
because you're going to have, like a large blue chip company does not want to keep all of their value in Dogecoin, right? Or some other like hot flash in the pan coin, don't hold me to that about Dogecoin, but some kind of very highly volatile currency. But a lot of people may want to. You may want to take payment in it as a speculative hedge. You may want to use it because it's the only way to access your airline miles. Like, we don't know where it's going, but the fact that you can attach smart contracts, so like with NFTs, if the
Mm.
artist sells it, they get a percent for every sale thereafter, and that's
Mm.
baked into the algorithm of the product, of the way
Yeah.
that it's minted. So yeah, it's there's lots of ways that it's going to have to pan out.
In your experiences, SMEs as opposed to big corporations, who drives technology and who actually then sustains it, and kind of how well, I suppose, in NFTs and cryptocurrency and like, how well do actually companies understand it at all?
I think everyone's still trying to figure it out, but that's true for technology more broadly, right? Like,
Mm.
since the pandemic happened, everyone's hair has been on fire in one way or another.
Literally, yes.
There you go. But what's curious, the difference between SMEs and big companies is that SMEs often act sooner. So on stuff like NFTs, that's not happening from IBM, right? Like, Sotheby's was fast, but I'm not sure you describe Sotheby's as like a cutting edge, or Christie's as like a cutting edge bastion of technology. But
Mm.
again, they were able to move faster than some of the big incumbent players, the big, blue chip companies. On the other hand, those same big blue chip companies have been making massive investments in things like sensor networks, Internet of Things, digital twins, analytics. They've been rejiggering their supply chains. They've been renegotiating large multinational contracts. They've been changing the substance of the market that underlies everything else, and that's no small thing, right? So that's a
Mm.
big change as well. And then of course, there's the future of work, which affects everybody.
You want to expand on your thoughts currently
Yeah,
about
sure,
where
sure,
that's
sure.
going?
I mean, the future of work is not going back to the way that it was, but it's
Mm.
also not the last 18 months, right? I spoke to one firm that specializes in distributed workforces, and they pointed out that work from home is not work from home in a pandemic.
Yeah.
It's something very different. And so as we move to 2 days a week in the office, or 3 days, or 5 days with flex, or 4 days, 2 times a month, or whatever it is that your company comes up to, the
Mm.
reality of it is that the workforce has just been given a massive boost in terms of negotiation power. So, and that has followed many things in terms of the K-shaped recovery. So if you're in demand, like let's say you're a top tier AI developer or data
Mm.
analyst, I don't know anyone who's top of their field that isn't looking for remote work.
Mm.
Like, if they want to be going into an office, then they'll get a remote work job that has an office nearby them. But they know that they are now offering themselves to a global set of employers. and that changes their negotiating positions significantly. On the other hand, if you're primarily if your education is primarily invested in flipping burgers, your negotiating power has just fallen way off.
Yeah. Tell me something, because I think you can draw parallels between technology and how technology rises and the work from home movement. Kind of how much does the media play into it in terms of kind of dictating where we end up?
The media used to be more broadly considered like radio, television, print, etc. And social media was sort of this thing that, that people did, but you wouldn't really include it in media. But especially since the last U.S. election and, again, the pandemic, it's become quite clear that, in fact, the inverse is true.
Right.
So we first get news from social media and our online communities, and then second, we get influenced by other sources. So when you ask what the effect of media has been, it's been massive, but it's also been hugely changing.
And for you over the last year, how have you viewed the world differently? What's changed for you? I mean, no small question.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, as with everybody, everything's changed. I was living in the heart of New York City. Now I'm living on a small farm in Iceland. And I used to be pretty sure that I'd keep on paying mortgage payments. Now I may be living in another country in 6 months' time. Like, all of those things that we had been predicting and saying were coming, and the more flexibility in workplace and location and mobility and all the rest of it just arrived overnight. And at the same time, the technology stuff, there's an economist called Tyler Cohen, whose work I follow, and he wrote a book that he self-published like 10 years ago called The Great Stagnation. And it was not well received because it was essentially saying, look, all these technology innovations we're doing, pet.com, all that stuff, it's totally BS. It's not actually innovation. It's not changing the world. We're celebrating ourselves without any reason to. And so it was not popular, as mentioned. He recently did another publication saying, okay, now it's over. Now we actually are having massive innovation, and the disruption is being masked by the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. But if you think about it, we've got M1 chips in the new Macs that are unlike anything we've seen before in terms of their abilities. We've got mRNA vaccines, which are now potentially curing malaria. There are now new treatments coming around for HIV, and they're looking at doing a general vaccine for all the coronaviruses. So you never get a cold of any kind again. We have new stuff in space. We've got new stuff in AI. I mean, any one of these innovations, if you'd released them 4 years ago, would have dominated all of the news cycles on all channels. But now they're all happening at once. Essentially, my posit is because the pandemic came along and everyone said, okay, all that inertia, all that don't rock the boat, all that, keep doing, keep calm, carry on, just went out the window. Let's just do it. Now we're working from home. Okay, let's just do it. Bring your own devices. Okay, let's just do it. Global vaccination program. All right, let's try for it. So like everything has changed in terms of embracing all the tools that we've been developing for the last couple of decades, but hadn't yet put into play yet.
Do you think we're at the beginning of that, or do you think we're peak? We're peak.
Oh man, no, we haven't even, we put our shoes on. We haven't even started running yet. Like the change that's coming ahead of us. I mean, when I talk to my kids about the future that's coming, here's a way to put it. My 8-year-old was talking to his mother-in-law, or I'm sorry, his grandmother, my mother-in-law. Yes. And she was saying, well, one day I'm going to be dead. And he said, well, one day you'll probably be dead, Grandma, but I don't know that I'm going to have to be. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, science is advancing a lot. And at first we're like, oh, those kids, they're so funny. And then I was like, well, actually, yeah, I know Dr. Aubrey de Grey, he's been looking at solving for the problem of aging, and they've been making a lot of changes around like scavenging senescent cells out of your brain. And I started digging into it, and like, yeah, you could get another 20 years based on the science we have today. And the other 4 areas he's outlined now have a huge resurgence of funding, and there's some breakthroughs that, I mean, yeah. So the end conversation was to my 8-year-old was, yeah, you probably will die. Let's not like take that one off the table, but you're probably going to live a whole lot longer than we expect. And that's a new conversation.
Josh, on that note, I don't think there's anything that can top that, to be honest. Thank you so much, Lee, for your time. Always fascinating speaking to you, so really appreciate it. Take care and stay safe.
Always a pleasure.